John Savvy, you have the mic.
Welcome, 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 everyone. We are so excited to have you here, all the members of the retail community, especially the MMTLP folks. We are incredibly honored to have Mr. John Brda joining us today. John, welcome. John, are you there? I think your mic is muted.
How's that? Is that better?
Perfect. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Absolutely. So just to give everyone a rundown of how we're going to operate the space today, we have for 1 week been collecting all the questions from our retail community. We have combined those and made those into succinct questions. So Curtis and I will be administering those questions to John today. And we understand, John, that there may be some questions that you cannot or are unwilling to answer. We will respect that. And if you need to answer, I can't answer that, we will move on. So we just wanted to make sure that you knew that. But these are questions that have been pervasive throughout the community, answers that people would like to have. And so we appreciate the opportunity to address those questions to you, John. So let me do a quick introduction for those that may be new to the space. We are here with John Brda. John is the former CEO of Torchlight Energies. He is the founding member of Flamethrower LLC. He is a retail advocate, a fair market activist, and an MMTLP whale. So again, welcome, John. We're grateful to have you here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So John, let's, if you don't mind, let's clear some air. You have received a lot of criticism recently, and you've had accusations leveraged against you, especially in regards to the selling of your MMTLP shares and options. For the record, John, what was your share position prior to the selling of any shares?
Approximately 2.2 million, but let me give you some context. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
I get this from time to time from the people on the other side of the equation, and it just, makes me furious, for a lot of reasons. Let me give you some context of what I did do for shareholders. So I was one of the founders of the company, and about 2 years into it, 2012, I gave back to the company 2.5 million of my shares to save dilution for the company. I went without pay many times for the company. I always deferred 40% of my pay at all times. My original options from Torchlight expired in 2020, and then I got new options that, because of the reverse split with Meta, were priced at $1 and $2, and I have 1.1 million of those options, which have never been exercised. And just so you know, those warrants, I agreed to take those, options, because basically with the caveat that they would never have vested if we didn't finish the merger with MMAT. So of the 2.2 million shares I had remaining from the Torchlight days, I sold approximately 300,000. I have over 1.9 million remaining in MMTLP. So I will guarantee you that no one of those fudsters would have ever done what I did, not only for the company, but for the shareholders and for the betterment of everybody. So I'm going to put that to rest finally. I tweeted about it again this week. All these people, that come out and attack me with no information and basically just throw jabs out in the air, can just go pound sand as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you, John. We're all getting attacked, not as viciously as you.
And quite frankly, this is the last I'll talk about it. I don't owe anybody anything.
No, you don't.
And so I'm not going to talk about it again because these people are idiots, and all they for interesting to me is, what are they doing on these spaces? If they don't if they don't like MMTLP, then go somewhere else. Go chat on a stock that you like. Why are they on these spaces bashing people? I mean, these people have nothing to do with their lives other than get on these spaces or get on Twitter and bash people that are supporting what we're doing. It's insane to me. Get a life.
Well, John, first of all, let me say, I agree. You owe us nothing in terms of discussions of your shares, your options, and your money. My philosophy is I don't want people talking about my money, so I don't talk about theirs. Right. But they were 100%. Questions coming from the community, and I sincerely appreciate that you're willing to clear their air and to dispel those fudsters. Also,
Yeah,
we're all getting attacked. I don't think none is as vicious as you, but it's obvious that, as 100 always says, we're over the target, and so these attacks are getting more frequent. And so we appreciate the opportunity to clear some of that air with you. So just to confirm, you started out with 2.2 million shares. You sold 300. Those were sold, and I believe you said before the few weeks before the halt, correct?
they were spread out over the 60 days prior to, but I will tell you this is that, from time to time I received information that would have put me in an awkward spot in the market. And whenever I received information that the public didn't have, I didn't trade at all. And so I'm extremely cognizant of making sure that I don't put myself or the market in jeopardy of anything. So, this is not my first rodeo on that side of it. So, those numbers are approximate. I do know
Okay.
that I have over 1.9 million remaining. So I don't know if I sold a total of 300 or something less than that, but and quite frankly, that's the first time I've ever sold anything in 12 years. And I've been out of the company for a year and a half and still hadn't sold until that point. So again, I owe nobody an explanation.
Correct. And John, I think it's clear more than ever that you are in this fight with us as well. So thank you for answering that and putting those rumors to bed. So we really do appreciate it. Let's go on to AST. John, a lot of us are struggling with our decision as to whether or not to transfer our shares to AST. Of course, the brokerages have made that process very difficult. It seems in the last couple of weeks, it's getting a little bit easier as we're seeing people from multiple brokerages now being moved over to AST. But if all of our shares, whether currently registered at AST or in bulk certificate at our brokers, entitle us to the same rights, dividends, and privileges of a shareholder of NextBridge, in your opinion, what are the advantages to transferring our shares to AST?
Well, I don't. Everybody has their own opinions on this, and I will tell you what I'm doing. I am not transferring my shares, and this is just my opinion, until we get from FINRA or the SEC or DTCC what they're going to do. Because one of the things that I believe happens when you send these back to the transfer agent, because there's not DTC eligibility or DRS availability of NextBridge hydrocarbons, that if something ever happened, and I don't know if it is or isn't or what have you, but if something ever happened, then it would be very difficult for your broker to assist you in the sales process. And so, and this is just my opinion, and everybody can do what they choose to do. But the only reason I'm saying this for me is because I'm at RBC, and I don't know, there's not that many shares at RBC, and the shares that are there are pretty easily identifiable. So it's not like TD Ameritrade that has, over 50 million shares at their location. So for me, I don't feel like RBC is one of the perpetrators of the bad acts. I may be 100% wrong, but I feel like they're not. So I'm comfortable keeping my shares there until we know what's going to go on, because RBC has a certain allotment from AST. So does TD Ameritrade. So does E-Trade. So do all 105 brokerage houses have an allotment, and they can't go over that allotment. Now, if I were in Fidelity or TD or Schwab or E-Trade or any of those that may or may not have a problem, then maybe my opinion would be a little different. But that's how I'm treating it currently.
Okay. And this is more of a sensitive question, and feel free to not answer, but do you have any knowledge if any of the whales have transferred shares? We know that McCabe, of course, was given shares 56 million through his transaction with NextBridge. And so the assumption is that those are already at AST. But do you have any knowledge, either with your Flamethrower partners, that you are able to share if they have transferred any of their shares to AST?
I do not. I don't have
Okay.
knowledge nor would I share that if they did. So.
Okay. No, we appreciate that. Thank you. John, you've publicly stated in the past that your attorney scheduled a meeting with FINRA and their representatives and DTC and their representatives on December 8th. And FINRA notoriously ghosted you in that meeting. Are you able now to discuss what the purpose of that meeting was?
Yeah, so it wasn't when you say it was our attorney, so it was NextBridge attorneys and Meta's attorneys. Okay, I was not represented by attorneys and I was not invited to the meeting. But I do know from what was discussed that DTCC, if you remember, did not forward the corporate action to their broker dealers, and they did not agree with the corporate action from FINRA. That's why that meeting was scheduled the next day. DTCC requested a meeting. It wasn't FINRA. It wasn't our attorneys. They requested it, and everybody was expected to be on the call, and FINRA never showed up. And then 6 hours later, they put out a new corporate action.
Do you know what particular the details of what DTCC did not support in that corporate action or disagreed with?
I don't have the details. That
Okay.
they have not given us that information. But
Okay.
obviously, if they were to agree with it, they wouldn't have had the problem. So obviously, there was a problem in their minds.
Okay, John, thank you so much. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about flamethrowers. So I'm going to pass the mic to Curtis.
Thanks,
Sure.
John. Hey, how's it going, John?
Good, good.
Thanks for joining. So these are crowdsourced questions, as you know. So some of these have been answered before, but just to recap. So with Flamethrower LLC, per the press release, we know that Flamethrower has retained Wes Christian and his law firm, and also employed Share Intel to perform some of the share count reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand you can't speak of specifics, but can you provide any level of update with where things stand in terms of gathering data?
All I can say is it's a slow road. we are gathering data on some aspects of it, and other aspects are just slow to come to us. So it's unfortunately this process is going to take longer than I want it to take, and it's going to cost more money than I wanted to pay. But we're committed to it, and we're going to keep pushing to get that information. So when we're able to finally get all the information and make the determinations, we can do what's best for everybody. So that's where we're at in it.
Awesome. So I think you've mentioned publicly before, and Wes has alluded to it. The limitation goes back roughly 5 years that they can look back. What kind of data are they looking at and focusing on from the Share Intel side? So is it specifically just the legacy short positions within Torchlight? Is it pertaining to the listing of MMTLP on the market? Can you speak any about?
So it's my understanding, and I don't know how Share Intel does it, but they have their own proprietary software. But when they gather information, it's information from AST, it's information from Broadridge, and it's information from DTCC. And what they do is compare the three of those on a weekly basis to see if there's any discrepancies, because Broadridge is able to reach into the broker dealers and get basically a screenshot, or I would call it a screenshot, but basically a quick look at how many shares they're carrying on their books. And they can do that at a moment's notice and go back in time and say, okay, on this date, they had 50 million shares, but then you can check with AST and say, okay, well, AST had only 40 million shares for Seed & Co., which is DTCC. So that's when you know a discrepancy exists, and that's when you know, particular who to go after. Now, one of the limitations in this process is that it does not give you the broker-to-broker clearing, and it does not give you discrepancies in NSCC. But that's why you have to actually file suit to get that information. And really, all you're trying to do with this information is get past the motion to dismiss, so you can get to discovery.
Excellent. Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
So regarding that, so assume that Share Intel's successful in uncovering that data, and there are approximate numbers that are uncovered. Is that data that would be shared publicly with MMTLP and Next Bridge Hydrocarbon shareholders?
I don't think so. And the reason being is because it has confidentiality in Share Intel's process.
Got it.
So.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for that. Moving on. So I think a lot of the crowd here today was able to tune in to the roundtable with Roger Hamilton again yesterday, and listen to Wes and company and you discuss some of the activities. Is there anything that you weren't able to cover in yesterday's session regarding any kind of updates that you'd like to speak on?
Not that I'm aware of. I thought that was a pretty good call, and I was, making sure that I let everyone know that our audience, our team, our warriors, so to speak, have been just phenomenal, and we greatly appreciate it. And quite frankly, it needs to keep going. We can't be quiet until it's over, and then we can all take a deep breath at that point. So.
Excellent. What's your general sentiment for where we stand? I know we're all in this fight knee deep together, but as of March 3rd, what's your overall sentiment? Are you optimistic? Do you think that there's going to be enough evidence to hold the hedge funds, the market makers, the counterfeit shorts accountable?
Well, I'm 100% sure the evidence is there. The problem is, how do you get it? And so FINRA hides behind closed doors, so does the SEC, so does DTCC. So the only way for them, for us to get that information from them would either be to file a lawsuit against, certain, I wouldn't say individuals, but companies that we believe to have an imbalance or have performed nefarious acts, and then get to discovery. And then the information that's reported to those entities, DTCC and FINRA and SEC, becomes discoverable. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to have Congress apply enough pressure that they either get the information willingly or they get it via subpoena. And I will tell you, we're going down both paths. We've had tremendous uptake with Congress on this. And I don't want to tell you who exactly is involved because they haven't told me I could talk about it yet. But I'm hoping that those letters go to the appropriate people, and they let us publicize those letters because they're quite impressive. So.
Excellent. Yeah, I know that's been a point of pride for this community, and can't speak highly enough about the people that have been involved in either creating the websites like fairmarketsnow.org with Hollywood Henry and his team, but making it easy to blast out those congressional letters. And there's many iterations of them, but I'm glad you called that to attention, because it sounds like one of the most impactful things that we can do as an investor community.
Oh yeah, 100%. No doubt.
Excellent. So just one last question regarding Flamethrower. Do you know whether there's any intention, assuming that this is successful with MMTLP and resolution, is there any intention on making Flamethrower itself available to other companies to really assist in really investigating and holding accountable any of these other nefarious actors?
We talked about that actually as not necessarily a business model, but a model to, if let's just say this, if it was worth our time and effort, and the problem is we don't have the positions in other companies like we do MMTLP. So we're doing this, really because we have such large positions. But if it turned into a business model where we could not only help, but also, make a buck doing it, I think that would be something we would look at for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, back over to you, John.
Thank you so much for all that information, John. We appreciate it. Let's move on and talk about Congress and kind of some of the inroads that we've made, and particularly to your efforts. We understand that you have an upcoming meeting with Congressman Ralph Norman. Are you able to tell us how that meeting came about?
It came about through someone on Twitter who's in their district and reached out to me and asked if I would do a call, and 100% I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And I do know that they're working with some of the same people that I'm working with, so they're sharing information. And so I look forward to the call. That'll be an interesting call.
Yeah, absolutely. John, are you able to go over some of the main points that you plan to cover with the congressman?
I don't really know where he wants it to go, so I'm just gonna, obviously I know this thing backwards and forwards, so I
Sure.
think it's probably going to be more probing questions from his standpoint, and then we can direct him to the appropriate people inside of Congress that already have all of the information. And what we're trying to do is to make sure this is highly focused, is have a single point of contact inside of Congress on the oversight committee that will be spearheading this effort and have everybody work through them. That way, we have the best chance of this getting accomplished.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Let me ask you a question. What role do you think that Congressman Norman, or we've had communications with other Congress people as well, what role do you think that they may play in a potential resolution to our situation?
I think it's more understanding the information they can get and really holding FINRA and the SEC to hold their feet to the fire on this. And if it takes subpoena, if it takes hearings, if it takes all of that, then I think that's where we need to let them go. One of the things that you have to understand that was brought to our attention is that Congress is a legislative body. So not only do they want to have the information, but they want to be able to use this information for good and for change. And so one of the things we had to give them is basically, okay, if we're able to get this information and we're able to prove all of these things that you're talking about, what would you change? What laws would you change? So we gave them a lot of different ideas and concepts. We gave them ideas that we had, and through Wes, we also gave them ideas from Susan Trimbath, and basically said, look, all of these things can be done, but in order for you to really make sure this is bipartisan and that it gets through, and it gets through without any pork in it, and a lot of times, if you remember a year or two ago, the short selling rule changes didn't go through. Well, the reason why that didn't go through is because they had all kinds of other crap in it that had nothing to do with short selling, right? And so now that Congress is a single focus bill, I think we have a better chance of actually writing something that both parties can agree on and that both parties can push through. So that's what we're focusing on, and they are keen to that. So they want to make a difference. They want to use this as an opportunity to fix what is wrong in our system. But I believe the only way to do that is to not make a rule, then try to support it. I think you get the facts and then make the rules around those. So.
Yeah, I think the point you brought up about clean bills is incredibly important. They do like to shove a lot of special giveaways and personal projects into those bills that just people aren't willing to vote for. And so even though they may support the intention, they're not willing to vote in all that pork that you spoke of. So
Right.
definitely clean bills is a focus. So, John, in Wall Street Conspiracy, that is Christina Copeland's documentary from 2012. After the 2008 market crash, Congress attempted to hold hearings in regards to market corruption and manipulation. Unfortunately, those hearings were squashed by two very powerful politicians, the ranking member on those committees, as well as the Secretary of the Treasury. Do you feel that there's a difference in this Congress in this time?
Well, I hope there is. I feel like there is, but I more than that, I hope there is, because there's, we're not the only ones, and I think that what's become really prevalent and really eye-opening is how many companies have been destroyed because of this. And then, quite frankly, the CEOs are all now starting to take action, which is fantastic. I actually, as the CEO of Torchlight, I knew there was problems in our settlement process back in 2014. And I was advised by inside counsel and outside counsel just to keep your head down and take care of your business. And, because the old saying is that, when you report something to FINRA or report something to the SEC, they could care less about what you're reporting. They want to know what you're up to. And so I was given that advice 4 or 5 different times by ex-SEC attorneys. And so, people that used to work for the SEC. So that's disheartening. That that approach is kind of the norm. But I'm hoping that norm changes, and I hope that because of all the changes in social media, really. I mean, back in 2012, social media was important, but it's nowhere near as important as it is today. And to be able to reach, hundreds of thousands of people with this, I think is really impressive. And, we've got John Stewart talking about it, for God's sakes, which is fantastic. So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. What we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 months is unprecedented, and absolutely social media is part of that. So we have to use all of the tools in our quiver in order to get this done. Last question, though, is we all know, and something that we've discussed extensively throughout our community, that politicians receive contributions from hedge funds and market makers, and the appearance is that they exhibit intense pressure on those politicians. How are we as retail and the CEOs going to penetrate that wall of opposition and truly push them to realize that it may not be worth those donations to betray us?
it's all it is squeaky wheel. When somebody comes in and gives a big donation to a PAC or what have you, if enough of us are in the ear of that congressman and they understand that, hey, this is, it's more important for me to take care of my constituents and the people as opposed to getting those dollars, then it'll change. But I think there's so many problems we could go into here with the way that Congress operates, and dark money and term limits, all of that kind of stuff, I think kind of plays into it. So, that's a discussion for a different different space call. But
Yeah,
it's not going to be easy. I will tell you, it's not going to be easy because there's no doubt they have the ear of the people that are on these committees. So.
well, and as I said in a conversation earlier today, money is one thing, but if you don't get the votes, the money's going to dry up. And so, our favorites at the top of these hedge funds, they get one vote. And so we just have to make sure that our vote follows their policies. And if they don't act in our behalf, we're taking our vote somewhere else. And yeah, so I think that's definitely a great opportunity that we have. So, John, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about our favorite subject, NextBridge, and the assets. But first, Curtis is going to ask you some questions. We know that you're limited on what you can and can't discuss with NextBridge, but let's try and keep it more in terms of your opinion and your experience as a CEO of an oil gas company. And but yeah, Curtis, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Junk. And these questions were started, at least from a fielding perspective, over a week ago. And since on February 27th, we had the operational update from NextBridge Hydrocarbon. So I think some of them are answered from within that. But one of the questions from one of the community members was just an expression of frustration from the lack of communication from NextBridge Hydrocarbons, just on lack of response. And I know there was allusion to a potential investor presentation months ago, and that has not happened. But since that statement has been made, again, there has been the operational update, and I also did see NextBridge Hydrocarbons had an intro YouTube video to introduce some of the members of the leadership team as well. But just regarding communication from NextBridge Hydrocarbons, would you be able to shed any perspective on why they may not be forthcoming in communication? And then also if there's any updates or any knowledge that you might have around a potential investor presentation in the future?
So the answer to that is I have nothing for you. I actually am not involved in anything on a day-to-day with them. I talk to McCabe quite a bit, but we very rarely talk about NextBridge. My focus has been this MMTLP situation. So anything and everything that has to do with NextBridge will have to come out of Clifton and management. So I'm sorry, I just don't have anything for you on that side at all.
No worries. Regarding AST, because that's the communication between NextBridge Hydrocarbons, the broker-dealer communication that each of the investors are receiving, and then AST. There seems to be some inconsistency that's happening, as you can imagine, across all the various broker-dealers. And really, the follow-up question for that was, how can we as investors have confidence that Bridge Hydrocarbons and AST are working in our best interest? So would you be able to at least speak to the AST side?
Well, I know AST is one of the largest, transfer agents out there, and they've been straightforward in my dealings with them, and so I have no reason to distrust them. So, from that standpoint, just on a personal involvement, I don't have any issues with AST. But again, I'm not involved with NextBridge or AST in any communications they have back and forth. I wasn't involved with the certificates being issued, none of that. So I'm aware that there are substantial issues on a broker basis, but I don't have any insight on how to fix it, nor have I stuck my nose in the middle of it, so to speak.
It's a mess.
It is. I know.
It's a mess. So in regards to that, ultimately, if we were to pose this question at a high level, still struggling with Bridge Hydrocarbons is still struggling with identifying who the actual real shareholders are. Does a private company have a right to know who their shareholders are, and do they also have the right to demand a list of shareholders from brokerages?
So the answer to that question is I would assume so. I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer that, but certainly corporate governance plays a huge part in this. So there are tons of cases where people thought they were doing shareholder votes and came back with more shares voted than were actually outstanding. So that's not unique. It's a problem, but it's not unique, and no one's ever fixed the problem. So if I were involved in NextBridge, I would be asking those questions. How am I supposed to have corporate governance? How am I supposed to know, all of this information? But that's up for them to do that, and that's really all I can say about it. And I don't know if the broker dealers will even conform with that, because NextBridge is not their client. Their client is you, the shareholder.
It also might not be in their best interest.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying, right?
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for that, John. So regarding staying on topic with AST, could you shed a little light around what is commonplace for communication for companies, whether public or private companies, and how they interact with regarding transfer agents? Like, what does that interaction normally look like? When would you engage transfer agent regarding anything to do with shares sold or registered? And obviously that comes to light with there's this constant inquiry within the investor community of where we stand in terms of filling the seats on the proverbial bus, right? So is that a normal conversation that would happen, or is this really a unique circumstance just because of the spin out?
No, this is completely unique. I don't think they've ever had anything like this, to be honest with you. At least that was told me way back when I was kind of dealing with it. But from a standpoint of the company, there's really not much to do on a daily basis with the transfer agent, particularly if it's most of the shares are in street name. Seed & Co. basically manages that, so they don't actually go back and forth with the transfer agent at all. So, for example, if you have 100 million shares out in a company and 90 million of them are in street name, well, that means there's one certificate for 90 million with Seed & Co. And then they don't interact with the transfer agent on a daily or weekly or monthly or even annual basis to let you know who those shareholders are. The only shareholders that a transfer agent has is those who are considered of record, and that would be Seed & Co. being one of them, and then anybody else who has their shares directly registered with the transfer agent.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
One last follow up on that. So, in your opinion, what happens if AST identifies that the proverbial bus is full and shorts are not reconciled and we're still holding shares?
then I think the pressure on Congress and FINRA and SEC gets to the point where they have to do something. Now, I don't know. One of the things that everybody, well, maybe they're conflating this, maybe they're not, but I want everybody to understand that let's say there are 60 million shares at TD Ameritrade that want to go into AST. Well, they only get to put in 53 million because that's what they were allotted, right? So those 7 million shares, TD Ameritrade's going to give you every excuse in the book and say, we can't really get them in, or we can't get it done, or it's going to be 6 weeks, or it's going to be 3 months, or whatever, right? So that's an indication that you have a real problem. But they can't take somebody else's shares. They can't take Fidelity's, can't take E-Trade's, nobody. So they're only allowed to fill up the bus on their own bus, their own seat on the bus, so to speak.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Junk.
Hey, John, first of all, thank you so much. It sounds like you might be a little under the weather. So the family, the community wants to thank you for soldiering on and coming and joining our space to answer some questions. So, John, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the $40 million private offering. You have experience as a CEO and an oil and gas man. So I'm just asking for your opinions from that perspective, not particular to any communications with NextBridge. But what do you think was the purpose of that offering?
Well, first of all, it's not an offering. It's a registration statement. And so it only turns into an offering after a prospectus is filed with whoever they sold it to. So it's a registration statement. I know that they have to, basically raise capital at some point over the next 9 months inside of NextBridge to continue the drilling program. And that seems to be the most efficient way to accomplish that. So I have not been aware of anything that has been done on that 40 million registration statement. I don't think it's even been approved by the SEC at this point. So I think it's just sitting there and, for use at a later date, only after the SEC approves it.
John, is there any chance that 40 million shares would be sold to a hedge fund with short positions?
So this is just my personal opinion on this. I don't think a hedge fund or a broker dealer or a market maker or anybody who's been caught with their pants down on this halt is going to do anything unless FINRA or SEC tells them to do it. And if they tell them to do it, it'll be public information. And then keep in mind, NextBridge doesn't have to sell it to them. That's so if somebody, a hedge fund comes and says, well, I'll pay you $2.90 a share, they can say, go pound sand. That's not what we're doing. We have your other choice is to go into the market and try to buy it. If there's no market, okay, sorry, we don't have to sell you these. So they're in a unique position, and I do know because of the kind of guy McCabe is, and him being the largest shareholder, that if something like that did happen, and let's just say the people that need to buy shares were able to negotiate a deal with NextBridge, I guarantee you that he would do what's right for all of the shareholders. So he's not that type of person not to have everybody's mindset and opinions at heart. So
yeah. Well, and we've had lots of discussions and, ideas about what that 40 million, some of us think it was just bait to see if anyone did come forward and attempt to secure those shares. Of course, they're going to have operational costs. Their lease requires them to drill 5 wells a year, all that kind of stuff. But one of the theories that we've talked about is, we think that if a dividend is offered, they could sell those shares for a particular amount. And then even a small dividend to the shareholders could put severe pressure on the shorts and brokerages that have to cover that. Is this something that you think they would be considering? We're talking, even $1 to a $2 with the potential for the number of oversold positions. You could be talking about $1 billion amount that they have to cover that they owe us, whether we're in NextBridge or not. Is that
Right.
something that you think that they'd be discussing?
They,
Again, your opinion.
yeah, I mean, my opinion, that's they could potentially be discussing that, but I don't know if they are or not.
Okay.
I know the type of people that are running the organization, and they're not there to milk the cow, so to speak. They're there to do what's right for all the shareholders.
Yeah. I just think we think, that they need to sell those 40 million at $100 to $1,000, but they really don't. They could sell it for less. And I'd love it if they'd sell us to us, but we're not accredited buyers. But then kick back a dividend and inflict some serious pain on those hedge funds that are holding the short positions. But hopefully, I'm sure that they are, like you said, very smart, very intelligent. They've shown themselves to be very strategic. So hopefully that's something that they'll consider. Let's talk a little bit about the assets. So they just recently released a report, a press release, and they talked about 5 potential distinct reservoirs. They also talked about them being shallow, which from our own experts within the community, they've indicated that is makes them even more valuable. So what does that mean that they have 5, you're an oil and gas man. What does that mean that they have 5 distinct reservoirs, and does their shallowness, how does that factor into significant steps towards a sale?
So, I did not read the press release. I will tell you, I've been out of town, and I knew it went out, but I did not read it. And so I don't know if those 5 zones are all brand new zones, or if they're revisiting, some shallower, midterm zones. I'm not sure. But I will say that shallower zones, basically what they're talking about from an economic standpoint, is they tend to be less recoverable reserves, but significantly less to drill and complete. And so that's why that is what it is. So in the Wolfcamp zone in the Delaware Basin, for example, that's anywhere from 9,000 to 11,000 feet, in that range. And a typical well is going to cost $7 to $8 million, and you'll recover that in the first 12 to 16 months, and then the rest is gravy thereafter. So that's really what they're referring to. And then I do know that there are, having owned the asset, there are significant traditional plays out there as well that you don't have to go horizontal in. And so, from my conversations with Greg, they was very pleased with everything, and now they're going to take that information and decide, what they want to do this year. And they're always using the information to add to their data room in the potential sale process. This is not an asset they're going to own for 25 years. I just don't see that. That's my opinion, but I don't see that. It's too big.
Maybe we can clear a little bit of air right here. We know what happened with Roth Capital, and you came out very quickly and dispelled that rumor, but can you do it for us one more time? To your knowledge, is Bridge Hydrocarbons going public anytime soon?
To my knowledge, that is a solid no.
Okay, thank you. So, John, we talk so much about the oil in the ground, the reserves. We don't talk so much about the gas. Knowing that Europe is heading into a winter and we're seeing gas prices tick up, how much value does the gas reserves in the property add to our investment?
Significant. And quite frankly, we're the closest gas play to anything on the West Coast for LNG. So I know there's some plays going on down in Mexico right now. They're trying to get some LNG built. And I know Sempra is converting a facility on the West Coast from an intake facility to an offtake facility. And so we are the closest natural gas asset to those areas. So it's going to take time. It's going to take a couple of years for that to come to fruition, but it's an opportunity for the future where you can actually potentially get more than market for your gas. So it's a big deal. Yeah.
Hey, John. So we've hit the 45 minutes. We have a few more questions. Do you have time to answer those?
A couple more questions. I've got to jump on another call here shortly.
Okay, so let me ask you one more question. In all of the testing and drilling that's gone on, are you aware of any other valuable assets such as rare earth minerals, gold, silver, lithium, sulfur, coal that has been discovered on the property as well?
None of that's ever been tested because we don't have the rights for it.
Okay,
University
so we
has.
only have the rights to the oil and gas.
That's right.
Okay, that's great knowledge. Um, uh, I had some other questions, but I think we're going to go ahead and skip those. I was going to ask you, maybe if you want to answer, you can. Who do you think is the best fit to purchase these assets?
It would have to be someone, a major who has a manufacturing process in place, and there's probably a dozen of them that could do it. And so that's really all I'll say about it. But it'll be a major.
Okay. So John, we're going to go to just a couple burning questions, and I'm going to let Curtis go ahead and handle those. Curtis, the mic is yours.
Thank you, John, and thank you, John. Appreciate all your time today. To your knowledge, John, are there any resolutions being discussed in the background between any relevant parties, be it metamaterials, Next Bridge Hydrocarbons, broker dealers, DTCC, hedge funds, market makers, FINRA, SEC, the works? Any potential resolutions that you're aware of?
I have no knowledge of any of that. No.
That's what I thought as well. So, and what do you have any opinion on what might be some of the most likely pathways to resolution, whether it be well, I won't even suggest any. Do you have any thoughts on what some of the potential outcomes could be?
You know, I've always thought that this could trade gray market, but only if FINRA and SEC approve that. Anything that happens from either, trading for the opening of 2 days up to, buy to cover and, settle out positions to potentially trading for longer, but still no buys from retail to, going directly to NextBridge. Nothing's going to happen, in my opinion, until the SEC and FINRA come out and say, okay, here's what happened. Here's how many shares got trapped. And, here's how we're going to fix it. They're in control of this. And there's really, unfortunately, other than reminding our people that we elected on a daily basis that we need to fix this, there's really not a whole lot we can do. So keep the pressure on, keep the faith, and stay as a team. Don't try to divide each other. Don't try to, pay no attention to the FUD that's out there because they know nothing. And stick together. I think we'll get there. But I have no idea if it's going to be tomorrow or 30 days from there or 60 days. I don't know. But I know that there's a problem. And actually, I tweeted about it the day of December 9th when I didn't know there was a halt. And I said, today's the day we're going to find out if we were right or wrong. Because if a single share trades on that date, we know it was a short that had to cover.
Yeah,
And then
I
they
think.
halt there.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty damning. So
Yeah.
one final question for you. So and a follow up to that prior question about any potential resolutions, but I'll frame it up in a different way. So everyone wants to know a timeline, right? And nobody can establish a timeline. So I'm not even going to ask that question, but instead I'll frame it up like this. Of all the things that we have, in our arsenal as a retail community, what are the things, if you were to name like 3 impactful actions, what are the 3 most impactful actions that retail can take to push momentum towards expediting a timeline and ultimate resolution of MMTLP?
I think it's Congress, first and foremost. I think it's investigating the trading that went on in Europe. Secondly, and because it's still going on today for metamaterials, and it went on for Torchlight and MMTLP, and quite frankly, that with SEC not having over any purview on that, just shocking to me that they can trade U.S. securities without any jurisdiction or any oversight. It's just amazing to me. So I think there's a lot of problems with that. And then lastly, keep the faith. I mean, that's really it. I mean, you guys are doing a great job uncovering information. The amount of work that you've done is just mind blowing to me. but whenever we have new information, let's share it. Let's go through it and make sure that's getting into the hands of the right people that can put pressure on the people that can make decisions up in Washington, D.C.
Excellent. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, John. We know that you have to go. We are so honored that you would come and visit us today, especially since you're not feeling well. And we're going to open a space afterwards to continue this conversation. And we hope that you'll come visit us again. And after this whole situation is resolved, we'd love it if we could have a what you couldn't tell us conversation. So, but good luck to you and the whales of Flamethrower, and good luck with your meeting on Monday, and we look forward to reading your tweets about how they went. But John, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. I'm here to support you as well.
Absolutely. I appreciate all the help.
Thanks, John.
Thanks so much, John.
Take care.